Now, this is the somewhat interesting part. Why do we do this? I'm not sure. I used to be intimidated by the thought of making tortillas from scratch, but a friend of mine did it and expressed how simple it was, and so I decided to give it a try. And today I'm going to make them with you guys. So I'm making flour tortillas, and you only need 5 ingredients: flour, salt, baking powder, oil, and water. So in a large bowl, I'm going to combine the dry ingredients. So we need 3 cups of flour. I'm doing half white flour, half whole wheat flour, just because I want to. So just make sure you spoon your flour into your measuring cup. That way we don't put too much flour into our recipe, because flour will pack down. 1, 2, and 3. To that, we are going to include a teaspoon of salt, and the recipe calls for a teaspoon of baking powder, but since I used half whole wheat flour, I'm going to use 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, because whole wheat flour is heavier than all-purpose flour, so it needs a little extra help in the rising process. All right, give all of those a stir. Just want to get all of the leavener and the salt, all the baking powder, that's our leavener, incorporated among our flour. So once you do that, you're going to make a little well, a little crater in your bowl. So push up the flour against the sides, and into the well you're going to put 1 cup of warm water. Not hot water, not boiling water, just warm. You want to be able to put your finger in it without burning yourself. And then a 1/3 cup of oil. I'm using light olive oil. You can use whatever olive oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, just a neutral tasting oil. Now, this is the somewhat interesting part. You're going to slowly wipe the liquid up the sides of the bowl, and the flour is going to slowly fall into the crater you've made. Why do we do this? I'm not sure. I think it's just so you kind of evenly incorporate the flour. So just keep going at it. It may seem weird, but it's kind of fun. Until all of the flour falls down into a wet ball dough. A wet dough ball. Words are hard sometimes. And then when you're practically there, you can just scoop around and stir in. I have a firm spatula. A wooden spoon would work well also. And you want this mixture to come together into a ball of dough. But keep stirring for a little while. Don't jump the gun and add more liquid yet. You shouldn't have to. When your dough comes together into, it won't be a beautiful ball. The recipe says a shaggy ball. We're going to turn it out onto a lightly floured surface so that the dough doesn't stick to our counter. And then this is where we will knead our dough ball into a nice smooth ball. So if you're not used to kneading, you could just kind of push down with the bottom of your palm, and then you fold it onto itself and you keep going. So if the dough gets really sticky, kind of move it around to pick up some of the flour that we floured our surface with. And then you may need to add more flour, but keep kneading it for a couple minutes until it comes together into a nice smooth ball. All right, so once you have a nice smooth, manageable with your hands dough ball, we are going to divide this into 16 portions, about equal size if you can. So I just take the dough ball and try to cut it in half with my fingers. How many do I have? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Perfect. Okay, so these are going to just be kind of form them into little balls, and then we kind of want to put some flour on them because they're going to rest on our counter for at least 15 minutes, and we just don't want them to like get stuck on the counter. And the reason we let them rest instead of just going forth and flattening them out to prep to make our tortillas is because we just kneaded our dough, so it's very elastic, and when you flatten it out, it's going to want to shrink back in. And so by letting them rest for a little bit, it lets the gluten that we just created, we let the gluten relax, and that allows us to flatten it out, and it helps it to stay flattened out. All right, so once you have your dough balls all floured and balled up, we're going to let these sit for at least 15 minutes, and we're going to cover them with a towel or a piece of foil or a piece of parchment or something, and then we'll come back and roll them all out. Once your tortilla balls have chilled out, you might want to be sure you have some extra flour on hand. And you're going to need a rolling pin. And today I have my handy dandy rolling pin, aka empty wine bottle. And we're going to roll all of these out, and you don't want the uncooked tortillas laying on top of each other because they'll stick. So I'm going to get some parchment paper out and cut us out about 16 squares so that we can stack all of our tortilla dough rolled out. With your stack of parchment paper ready, let's get to it. And we're going to preheat a large frying pan. I'm going to use a non-stick one to medium heat. So we'll turn it to medium heat, and then we'll roll out all of our dough, and then we'll be ready to cook our tortillas. So make sure you have enough room on your counter to roll out the dough. And you're going to want to have some flour on your counter, and then you're going to want to flour your rolling pin. We just don't want anything to stick to anything. Now you're going to try and get them as thin as possible without tearing, because they're going to, I remember how I did this in the past. Roll it between pieces of parchment. That also helps it to not stick. Like I was saying, the tortilla will puff up a little bit when we cook it. And these might end up being a little bit thicker than the tortillas you're used to buying from the grocery store. And that's okay. They're also going to look a little more rustic than the tortillas you're used to buying, because there's a good chance they won't be perfectly circular. And that's okay. And some might be a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger than others. And that's just because we kind of guessed when we separated our dough into 16 portions. If your pan starts to smoke at all while you're preheating it, you can go ahead and turn it down a little bit. Last one. All right, you're probably sweating by now. Let's go clean up our hands and possibly your countertop. Okay, I have my plate of rolled out tortilla dough, and then I have my hot pan. And if you turn this down while you are rolling out your tortilla dough, turn it back up to medium heat. And then I just have another pan right back here with a little lid on it, and that's where I'm going to keep my cooked tortillas. So I'm gonna get out some tongs so that I can flip over my tortillas. And because I have a nonstick pan, I'm going to use silicone tipped tongs so they don't scratch up my nonstick surface. This process is gonna go relatively quickly. I'm going to get out my timer and just press start so that it starts counting, and I'm gonna set that aside, and we are going to get our first tortilla going. So get it peeled off of your parchment and then lay it down into your hot pan. Try not to get any wrinkles in it, but if you do, that's okay. So it's going to go in there, sit on its one side for about 45 minutes. Whoa, 45 seconds. So it'll be 45 seconds to a minute, and then we're gonna flip it over for about 15 to 20 seconds. So don't touch it. All right, 45 seconds. And you see, it didn't even stick to my pan. So this is what we want. We want nice golden spots on the bottom. If it starts getting too dark, like you're getting black spots, turn your heat down a little bit. And then this side will only take 15 seconds. It's gonna be real quick. And once you get some brown spots on the other side, you might want to let it go a few more seconds. There we go. And then right into a container that you can either keep them warm in if you're going to use them right away, or you can just stack them on for now until you're done. So, like I said, these are gonna go fast. And then once they're cooked, you can go ahead and stack them on top of one another. If you accidentally tear it as you're putting it in your pan, it's pretty easy to take the end of your tongue and just kind of pull the hole together. And this one I had a little bit of a crease when I first put it down, and I could see when I flipped it over that there was a small piece that didn't cook quite through. So that's why I flipped it back over and just kind of pushed the uncooked portion onto the hot pan. And I'm gonna move my plate away just a little bit because it seems that the heat is pretty hot over here and it's starting to warm up my dough, and I don't want to do that. This is what it'll look like in the middle. It'll be a little darker if it wasn't cooked through all the way on the one side. So this one I may need to flip back over to get that darker uncooked section cooked. That's better. Last one. And there we go. You can turn your heat off. Put the last tortilla in the pile. And there you have it, a stack of homemade tortillas. So this took me about an hour 15. It might take a little longer if you're not used to rolling out dough or this is the first time you're making the recipe, but I think it's 100% worth it. So it's going to be a little cheaper than if you were to buy tortillas, but of course it's more time intense. So it may not be a staple in your house, but every once in a while it's so worth it to have these fresh tortillas. My favorite thing to use these for is tearing them up and dipping them in hummus, which I have a killer recipe for. I'll link that down below. Or you could use these, of course, for tacos or You could use them for breakfast burritos or just to put some scrambled eggs in and roll them up. I have a recipe for those tacos as well. So much easier than I thought. Yes, it takes longer, but the flavor, the texture is just, it doesn't compare to store-bought tortillas. So give them a try. Let me know what you think. Was it worth making them? I think so. You may not think so, but let me know what you think. Oh, I almost forgot. So how I store these. So of course you can go ahead and serve them, use them right away. What I do with my leftovers is I keep them flat like this, and I put them in a Ziploc bag or a plastic container where they can lay flat. And on the bottom of the container, I wet a paper towel and I wring it out so that it's just damp. And I put that on the bottom, and then I stack the tortillas on top of the wet paper towel, and then I wet another paper towel, wring it out so that it's just damp, and I stick that on top of the tortilla stack. And then I either zip the Ziploc bag or I put the lid on the container, and then I keep them in the fridge. And I've always eaten all of them before they've gone bad, so I think you'll end up doing that too. But there you go, how to make them, how to store them, how to eat them. So if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos from me, hit that subscribe button and that bell so that you know when I drop my next video. And thank you all for watching.